Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, welcome back to Semantics Podcast. You are with Darby and Reese and our special guest, Amanda Hawkins, Associate Lecturer and Teaching Scholar in Anatomy and Physiology here at Southern Cross Uni. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Within your role here, so we've just gone through a few questions and we'll have a little bit of a chat. Reese, you doing well?
I'm going really good. Bloody tired though. Moving houses has never been a fun thing, and it never will be. But I'm almost certain that whenever I leave and come back, the things in my house have procreated and made more things because it's a never-ending thing.
Yeah.
There's just so much stuff to do, and then to clean, it's not enjoyable at all. Other than that, great week.
Wonderful.
How's yours been?
Yeah. I live on the coast. I go to the beach every day. My life is blissful. And I'm not studying across summer, so I'm a very happy chap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Amanda?
Lovely week. Had a great week. Lots of swimming, lots of beach, lots of sun.
Very
That's
good.
why we live on the northern rivers.
Yeah, utilise what you've got.
Yep.
So, Amanda, just to open up with the first question, you lecture in Anatomy and Physiology and have been at the university since 2009. How did you get to this point?
How did I get to be
Big
at Southern
question.
Cross University in 2009? Where do you want me to start from?
Wherever.
From the beginning?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wherever you can remember.
Well, okay. I can remember my childhood and at school, and I was actually very academically gifted at school. And so I was also very science oriented. So I went through the OC school, special classes for gifted kids, and then high school was very much into physics, chemistry, and maths, and so science was the thing for me. Very interested in the body all the time. Left high school and studied medicine straight away at University of New South Wales, and found that I didn't want to be there. And I was first in family. No one from my family had ever been to university before. My dad never even went to high school. My mum made it to year 8 and didn't continue.
Yeah.
They were both from big families, so I had big extended families. No one had ever been to a university before, and for whatever reason, I just didn't want to do it. I couldn't fit in. I didn't feel like I fitted in. I needed to go and do other things. So, dropped out of that. My first dropout. And
See, dropouts can be good.
yeah. Well, in life for me, I've always tried to act out of what was true for me and not out of fear.
Kind of like trial and error type things, and give it a go. If you don't like it, don't be afraid to quit and try something else.
Yeah.
Don't be trapped.
No, yes, definitely. And so I've always had that ability to decide I don't want to do this and I'll move on and I'll take whatever consequences. So, so this is the long version.
Yeah.
But I think it tells a story of, a lot of students do feel like they have to do it now and it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
And they might want to do something else and then come back to study.
And a lot of the time they're so young and they've just finished high school. They've done 12 years, I think, primary school and high school. Yeah. And then to be stuck with a up to 5-year degree.
Yep.
17, 18 years of teaching, of learning, and then to have a job. Where's their own time?
Straight in.
Yeah.
Where's their own self-discovery and journey?
Yeah.
I think that's what's really, really important with anyone.
Yeah, well, I definitely got to that point where, I needed to move and do something else, and I ended up just going overseas with some friends. So we went to Europe and Asia and did, the big travel thing. Yeah. And then I came back and I studied naturopathy for a year because, again, that was still there, the body and health. I was very into that, and it was just, it was just my interest, just naturally what I was into.
Yeah.
But again, really couldn't settle and study. It didn't really matter that I had the academic ability. I didn't have the drive, the motivation. I just, was very distracted and needed to do other things.
Yeah.
So I dropped out of that. And then I thought, well, what do I do now? I needed work, and I thought I'll be a youth worker. And I enrolled in a diploma of social welfare at Western Sydney Uni and dropped out of that after one session. I thought, no, this isn't for me. And
what about it wasn't for you?
What about it wasn't for me?
Yeah, because there's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
And there comes a stage where you kind of realise, well, I can't see myself doing this past this point. Was it the, were you still young and you still had that adventurous side and wanting to find out about so many other things, or was it just a short attention span and you lost interest?
I think by the end of high school, as much as I was a really great focused student in high school, by the end of my HSC, something had shifted and I no longer wanted to focus.
Yeah.
And so I was, not really capable of putting my head down and really focusing and studying. And so when I did that, I just realised I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here.
Yeah. So many other things that you can be doing.
Yeah,
There
and
would be
I,
no
and I was
obligation.
out doing lots of other things.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, I gave it a go, and then I knew that I didn't want to do stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just did, any job I could get to earn money.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with kids, did,
Yeah.
lots of things.
Yeah.
In those days, back in the 80s, you could easily leave a job and get another job. And,
Yeah.
Easy as that.
you could get taken on without qualifications, etc. So it was a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to be old because you you got to grow up through the 70s and the 80s,
And
which is fantastic.
It's a lot more rigid now, isn't it?
Yeah, I was chatting with my housemate the other day about, we remember the time when things were slower. We'd, me being a little bit older as well, we remember a time before mobile phones
Yeah.
where life was very, very different. The contactability, the pace, the instancy of things was very different.
Was there much frustration though? Because I'm 25 in
Yep.
3 days,
Yeah.
so 24 at the moment, and I've grown up with mobiles, not to the stage where like when I was born there was a smartphone. Nokia 3315s were the thing in high school,
Yeah.
but there was still that call him up, text that person now. But when mobiles weren't around, you had to wait, and communication wasn't as efficient. Was that somewhat frustrating?
No, not at all. You didn't know what you didn't have, really. Like
Good
when
point.
I left school, I remember a friend of mine saying, "Oh, I'm going to go off and study computer programming," and I said, "What's that?" Didn't really know what that was at all.
Yeah.
And I was 35 before I actually owned a computer, and 36 before I owned a mobile phone. And
There you go.
yeah, in the olden days, you just did things differently. It
Yeah.
didn't really matter.
There was-
But you also turned up. If you said you were going to be somewhere, you would be there because you couldn't call someone and say, "Oh, I'm running late."
Yeah.
Just a different world. That's all.
A few traits that I suppose don't get carried over, because you can easily flake out and send someone a text saying, "Oh, I can't do it," and make up some excuse.
Yeah, and that's very impolite.
Yeah.
Yeah, very impolite, but
But it's the way of the world
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've done it.
everyone
But-
has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The you were saying that as first to family to go to university.
Yep.
And then you changed, you were in your integrity and you just chose not to do those things because you didn't feel obliged to. Was there any pressure being the first in the family, or they were supportive of what you needed to do?
Yeah, no pressure at all.
Yeah.
There wasn't any pressure for me to go to university or do anything really.
Yeah.
It was up to me what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So that was fun.
They saw that you had the goods, that you had the knowledge, and that was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that was fine. Where was I up to in the little story?
You'd been working with kids, had a few jobs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then I asked why you
That's
kept
right.
dropping out and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Just
So-
just living, doing
Yep.
different things. In the 80s in Sydney, there was a lot of personal development trainings, and I got into that. So, exploring who I am and what I wanted in life. So I was always, very connected with that and spiritual stuff. And, got very into that. And then I moved to the Northern Rivers in the 80s, actually. I grew up in Sydney, and I moved to the Northern Rivers with a partner at the time. And we wanted to have like the farm lifestyle, and we came up here and we studied permaculture. And
Great.
we lived on a property out at Rosebank that backed onto Minion Falls, and spent my late 26 to sort of 30-year-old times in swimming holes and playing around, and that was great. And then I turned 30 and went, what am I doing with my life?
that pinnacle
Yeah.
turning point.
Yeah.
In terms of the part of this podcast is the concept of health and healing.
Mm.
Was there a massive amount of change in your life from city to country? Was it an active, we need to get out of here to be somewhere else for the betterment of ourselves?
No, not at all. It was more just for fun.
Yeah.
I'd come up with my girlfriend and we visited a friend of ours who'd just bought an organic banana farm.
Oh.
And so we came up and visited and had just this blissful time of, being out in the bush and me growing up in the city. She actually grew up in the country in England, so she was aware of country lifestyle, but I wasn't. And I was quite free at the time and able to go wherever, really.
Yeah.
And so it was more just, yay, change of lifestyle, let's go and have this new adventure.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Being free, because I'm from a place near Newcastle called Taree, and it's a small country town as well. But compared to Lismore, there's a lot more people here, and people seem to be more free, and things are happening, and it's a small town, community town, but at the same time, everyone is acting as a community, and people help each other out, and you've got a lot of healthy. It just seems a lot more healthy and vibrant here, doesn't it? Compared to, I suppose, Sydney, which would, it's a massive city.
Yeah.
Was that a somewhat shock to you, coming from the hustle and bustle of a city to coming to such a relaxed, welcomed community that is the Northern Rivers?
Not really a shock. I was very involved in things in Sydney that were, I don't know how to describe it, like I said, I was very involved in personal development training.
Oh,
so
okay,
I was very in that sort of community of people who were somewhat alternative in their thinking, in their approach to life. I think partly why I didn't manage to go straight from high school into uni and settle down there was because that was not my personality and my way, and I had another journey to take.
Yeah. And those alternatives had presented themselves to you. Yeah.
And so, moving up here was just another step in that and a whole new adventure. And lots of fun, just learning to live on the land and being very free about jumping in and out of swimming holes and going to the beach. We just had a ball.
Yeah.
I've got a little brother who's 11. Yeah, he's 11 and I'm 24. And thinking back to my childhood, it was a small fisherman's village. We'd play in the bush. We'd, ride our bikes down these tracks from, it's called the Lighthouse Track. So where the lighthouse is, it sort of ran across, it tapered down into the beach, but on the edge of it, like there's a massive cliff. Some of it was fenced off, some of it wasn't. But there was no fear from my parents to the point where they didn't want us to do it. Surely there was fear of, what if he falls off and dies? But there was that, let them be children. And I look at my little brother, and that aspect isn't there. And his friends are in the same sort of boat. It's all about their iPads and their PlayStations. And when they do go outside, they'll have fun and things, but they're so focused on their tech that, I sometimes wonder if that's going to affect future generations of their own freedom and being tied up to technology and the latest updates in apps and all those things that are happening. And, oh, we've got this update happening. Let's get that. This is happening now. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Whereas,
and those realms of self-exploration, those realms where kids are going out and making mistakes and falling over and getting back up and surviving for another day.
Yeah. It's very...
Yeah, I'm really grateful for my upbringing without technology. Not that I know what it's like to be brought up with technology, but we lived outdoors. We played, football in the, behind the house every afternoon. We had swimming pool, trampoline, riding bikes up and down the street. All the kids in the street would be playing on the street together, etc.
Yeah.
And I know you don't see that really very much anymore. It's just a different world.
Yeah, so many things going on.
Yeah.
So you got to 30. You were living here.
I was living up here. I got to 30 and I was working just whatever jobs I could get because I obviously had to still, even though I was playing all the time, I had to support myself.
Had to be an adult.
And and I was, the wages weren't great. It was about $10 an hour or something, and
No tips as well.
yeah. And when I was young, I didn't mind doing any sort of work. I'm very much a service person. I've done a lot of bar work, etc. But as I got older, it just wasn't right anymore. I needed to do something different. So it was the turning 30 point was a bit like, what am I doing with my life? And I thought, well, I'll go back and study something. But I was very into natural stuff. And so I thought, well, do I want to, train in Western medicine sort of technologies? Because it was still the health and the body. And I'd done a lot of self-study, right? So I virtually trained myself in what I know and understand about health.
Cool.
And so then I just thought, well, my passion has always been the body. So I will just go and learn about the body. And then see where that takes me.
Yeah.
And, obviously from a Western point of view with the anatomy, physiology. So I just thought to myself, I just want to find a course I can study anatomy and physiology in. And I don't really want to move. I want to stay in the Northern Rivers. So I looked at Southern Cross Uni, and the only course that had that in was human movement science. So actually in 1993, I enrolled in human movement science. So that was when I was 32. So it took me a little while from the freak out time to actually deciding to do something.
That's a good feeling though, when you finally find something that you can do and be passionate about.
Yeah. And I was a bit scared because of my other experiences of trying to study and then finding I was totally distracted and didn't want to do it anymore. I was a bit worried that I would do the same. And so that's partly why I decided I wouldn't make a big life change to do it.
Yeah.
And so I enrolled in Southern Cross Uni, and I didn't know, I knew I didn't want to do human movement science, but I wanted to learn the anatomy and physiology, so it was a bit like my trial.
Yeah.
And I enrolled in it. I found I could do it. And very interestingly, for those who know Jim Challoner was enrolled in the same year as I. So we met back in 1993 in human movement science.
Great.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a big reunion when I actually ended up coming back to Southern Cross Uni and seeing Jim.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And he's pursued the anatomist passion.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. So I studied my first session at uni here and was able to do it very well. And then I enrolled in the second session and physiology and realised that I don't want to go on and do the human movement path. Like I'd already done a placement at a high school teaching kids how to jump and throw, and I thought, no, this is not this is not me. I don't want this. And so then I decided I would actually leave and do biomedical science, which is your basic, body sciences, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, genetics, immunology, like right up my alley.
Yeah.
And so I looked around where I could do that, and it was the major capital cities, so Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, or Newcastle, Wollongong. And I grew up in the southern suburbs of Sydney. Yeah. And I decided that I would go to Wollongong because I was familiar with that area and I knew I could live closely. Not closely, cheaply.
Yeah.
Which is always a priority for uni students.
And close to the beach.
Yeah. Lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. And I went down there and did my degree.
Great.
Yeah.
And of the units you did, and physiology, anatomy, were they your two passions?
I loved neuroscience. That was my passion, neuroscience. Anatomy I did at Southern Cross Uni and I got advanced standing for it at Wollongong, so I didn't actually do the first year anatomy there, but I did a unit which is my very favourite unit I've done at uni, which was regional anatomy, which was a second year anatomy unit, and we actually got a cadaver between 6 or 7 people, and we got to dissect that cadaver over the session, and that to me was...
Dissect it.
So
you cut it open, you explored it.
Absolutely. It was the most fantastic learning experience I've ever had. And in those days, obviously, the rules were different because our assignment... People will be horrified nowadays, but our assignment was to videotape it and put a voiceover and point to all of the different structures in the body.
Can we find these videos anywhere?
I've lost it. Reece, I've moved house. So while I was studying at Wollongong Uni, I moved 7 times in 2 years. So,
wow. I'm complaining about once
I'm not
in 2 years.
interested in your complaints about moving. So, yeah, and somewhere along the line I've lost it.
Yeah.
It would have been fantastic because I was actually the person who did the voiceover.
Right.
And I remember, like, this friend of mine who was listening to it, she loved the way I said interventricular foramen. Playing it over and over again.
Loop it. Keep
There
it
we
going.
go. It's
Oh,
it's
no.
out there somewhere. Someone has it.
There isn't it. It's not a foramen. What is it? I just said the wrong anatomical term.
Oh no, an anatomist being wrong.
What's that groove at the front of the heart?
Interventricular.
Yeah, it's not a foramen though.
Sulcus.
Groove. No, I don't know.
Groove.
Is it sulcus? Sulcus, yeah, sulcus.
Sulcus.
Let's play multiple choice. For anyone listening out there, just
You
call
don't-
in.
Yeah. So you can get it wrong. Interventricular sulcus.
Always be open to admitting your mistakes.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
I am. That's partly why students love me. I don't.
You never
I
claim
don't
to
pretend
be.
I know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that humility, which is great.
Oh, thank you. I'm great, thank you. Yeah, so that was my favourite subject at uni because I learnt so much,
Yeah.
and it was such fun, and you really had to push the boundaries of what you were comfortable with, you know, because you've got this body that you're pulling things out of and
Yeah.
Yeah.
cleaning up, etc. It was great.
And you would do it in the way that we're now taught it, you know, start from the outside, work in different, like you would go through different parts of the
Different
body.
systems
Yeah,
each week.
okay.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I won't be too graphic with it, but
Oh, no.
for
I
the
find that
listeners,
fascinating because
but,
over
yeah.
time that has changed, and you know we do have access to cadavers. We're very grateful for them,
Yeah.
but no longer the dissection.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, you are not allowed to take photographs of cadavers or anything, and that's why it was, you know, back then I was saying we actually had to video it,
Yeah.
but nowadays you're not allowed to do that, so the rules have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, other unis you can do dissection. It's just that Southern Cross Uni buys, you know, hires in the cadavers already dissected.
From other universities.
Yeah, which is still an amazingly worthwhile learning experience for students to see them
Absolutely.
already dissected.
I remember the first time I went into the Cadaver Lab or the Cadaver Lab,
Yeah.
and the faces were draped,
Yep.
and Jim told us, and I think you did as well, that I think past week 6 or something like that, that the faces would be undraped.
Yep.
And the confrontation, the confronting experience of seeing a deceased person, although stripped of all its skin and things like that, so you could see the vessels and the muscle attachments, was second to none in terms of learning. But the first time the faces were undraped, there was an eerie sense throughout the whole room of like, oh my goodness, this is what a deceased person kind of looks like. And you know, I can't imagine what it would have been like to feel the scalpel entering the skin and physically removing all of that. I'm trying not to be too graphic, but was that challenging for yourself as well?
I was going to talk about that, and then I thought it might be too graphic
No,
for the
bring it on.
podcast.
Graphic.
Well, the first time I walked into the Cadaver Lab and saw a cadaver was in that unit, and there was a whole body lying on a slab. So that was and not draped.
Yeah.
So that was my first exposure. Because I hadn't done my first year anatomy at Wollongong Uni, I missed out on the slow introduction. So I walked in and I lost my breath, right? Because there's this body lying on the table. But it was very quickly, I just went into science mode and learning mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, the very first scalpel cut was just incredible. And we dissected the cheek and exposed the parotid gland. And yeah, just putting that scalpel, and you don't go very deep. You just go really shallow surface. And the thing about dissecting too is, like, you don't use a scalpel much. You use it to clear the skin away, but then if you use a scalpel after that, you're going to cut the nerves, you're going to cut the blood vessels, etc. And so a lot of dissecting is picking away the connective tissue and the fat. And then you realise why connective tissue is the most abundant tissue type in the body. It covers everything. So you've got fat and fascia all over the place. And in order to actually see the anatomical structures as they're presented to you in pictures in your anatomy books, you have to clean everything up. So a lot of dissecting is cleaning away connective tissue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to see what when we were in lab with Jim, to see how they get down to that state of showing tendons or any sort of connective tissue must have meant that someone has worked on them for hours.
There's
and
competitions,
make
I
them
believe.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, medical students get to do dissections,
Yeah.
which is fantastic for them, and it's a meditation. Like, we spent hours in the anatomy lab, doing our dissection of our bodies because we couldn't do it all in class time.
Yeah.
We loved it.
Yeah.
It was such fun.
That's
It's like
strange.
sitting with a jigsaw puzzle or something, but you're sitting with a body.
Yeah.
It's that same sort of meditative, relaxing activity.
Which is exactly what you would not expect someone to say as they're picking apart this deceased person, just call it meditative.
Yeah.
But there's this bizarre separation of a deceased person being there, but then the role of science and the role you have in being respectful and doing it carefully and meticulously to learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that gets me is Reese, you spoke about that word confronting, that confronting nature and people's first response of walking in there, some walking out, some becoming nauseous.
Yeah.
But there is, for me, my experience was it wasn't the first time I'd seen a deceased body, but there was something deeply sacred, and there was this instant connection to this is the longest lineage of knowledge of trying to learn from the get-go of humanity, who we are, how we function, what's going on, what these systems are. And I am just another link in a long chain of people who are doing this.
Yeah.
It was this real honor, and that these people would dedicate their lives or at least dedicate their deaths to the knowledge of other people doing it. Yeah. And my hope is that it never goes away, that we are still able as students to do so.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
There's so much advancements in holographic imaging. I was showing Darby earlier. They're essentially virtual reality goggles, and they throw out an image that only you can see, and then just by mere gestures of the hand, you can then separate a human body from the whole gross structure to the vessels to the nerves to the attachments of muscles and movements, and then see animations of blood pumping through a heart, and it's there. There's nothing visual in front of the person if you're looking at the person, but in their own little world, they've got all these fantastic tools at their fingertips that is just the beginning of this kind of technology.
It does sound fun.
It sounds fun, but, will that negate the current teachings,
Well, that is actually a discussion in anatomy teaching circles. And for me, I'm very old school. No, I don't think it does, because the value of cadavers is you get the texture, you see the individual variation. So in anatomy textbooks, you'll have blood vessels drawn a certain way, and then you'll dissect someone, and they'll have 3 blood vessels where the anatomy textbook said there'll only be 2, and
nothing is textbook.
Nothing is textbook, and for me, I think that would be a very sad day for learning anatomy if cadavers went out the window. Yeah. Yes, some of the technologies are fantastic, but the actual real experience of the human body, I don't feel can be replaced.
Yeah.
Well, I can't read things off a computer screen. I'm one of those people that have to print them off on a piece of paper.
Yeah, we're kinesthetic.
Yeah, yeah.
Amanda, we've spoken about how you've made it this far. Was stepping into teaching something that you've done with ease?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was always, I call myself a good explainer. I was always very good at explaining things, even when I was at school. Like, I'd explain maths problems to my friends and things. And because I'm good at science and I'm good at step-by-step process information, I learn really quickly. So I have always found myself in the learning environment in a bit of a teaching role, whether it's, just with my peers, etc., or not. But at Wollongong Uni, I was offered teaching positions when I was in 3rd year, and I tutored in the neuroscience class, and I also tutored in pathophysiology and many
bunches of other things.
Yeah.
And the teaching's always come naturally to me. I've always got very good feedback. There's just I just know how to do it.
If you can teach it, you know it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because I know it, I believe I can teach it. And I know that when I teach, I think about how I learn and try to convey that to the students.
Yeah.
Which I think does, because you're adding your own your own personal ways of learning to it. So it's very personable, and people can relate to that, which I think is an invisible thing that often goes unnoticed, making it personal and making it very understandable in layman's terms too,
Yeah.
rather than talking strict anatomical scientific terminologies.
Yeah, I really feel like I get it. I get physiology.
Yeah.
I understand the concepts really well in myself, in my own words, etc. So when I teach, I can actually convey that to students in a way that hopefully most of them can understand, and teach them how to do that for themselves as well.
Well, my point was that idea, that the motto that you put forward of make it make sense, and to have that taught to me early on, because I was a bit like you. I did well at school, but it was more literature. So I could just skim read things and have concepts and ideas enter my mind, but they were more in that kind of creative realm. So then when it came time to learn science, I had to learn how to learn. I had to learn how to absorb knowledge. And you said, day one, week one, make it make sense. And it took me weeks to unpack that. And it made me realize that if I'm reading this, I'm not reading it to get to the end of the page. I'm reading it to get this information in my mind to make sense, and then so I can pass it on to others. It was incredible. The way Reese was talking about how explaining osmosis by, what was the story?
The nightclub analogy about the guards, the security guards being the semi-permeable membranes.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of people outside, males and females, and the females are the penetrative particles. And they let the guards let all those in because they want people to be attracted to this nightclub. And then to equal out the ratio and get homeostasis, they'll let the males in so that we can pair up and everyone's all happy.
Look at that. That story is because of your teaching, Amanda.
Yeah, can I just correct you a bit there, Reece?
That's it. And that's exactly what you did when I said it last year. You were like, okay, but...
Penetrative particles diffuse across the membrane. What you're looking for is your non-penetrating particles.
So
there
you go.
In your analogy, what you actually need is that there is females inside who can't get out. And for the males to want to get in there, they move to equalise out the numbers or to equalise out the concentrations. The
There we
males
go.
will move in. But
Osmosis 101, there we go.
yeah, the key thing is the females can't get out. So
And nobody wants to be locked inside a nightclub.
Yeah, that sounds
maybe
very sadistic.
We'll revisit that analogy.
Oh, wow.
Amanda.
I think you made that mistake when you originally did explain it to me.
Yeah, I certainly did, because you said something along those lines.
In the aspect of knowledge, like we've been... For me, as a person that's new to science, and someone like yourself who's been around in the world of science for a while, I always thought that we knew everything. I always thought that when we come to science, or when we came to medicine, or when we came to naturopathy, we were coming from we have pretty much conquered everything. We know exactly what's going on. I continually open textbooks, whether it's neuroscience or even anatomy, that just says this area requires more research. What is exciting you the most about where these realms of learning and teaching are going to in anatomy and physiology for yourself?
In terms of what needs more learning.
And areas that you see that are expanding.
Well, definitely the area of gut health and the understanding of the role of gut bacteria in our health, and the idea that 10% of our cells in our body are actually the cells that make up what we think of as the human, and the rest is bacteria and fungi and viruses and things like that, which all have their own genetics and produce proteins, and all of those substances that are produced by the bacteria, etc., affect our bodies.
I'm sure you've got a plethora of resources, but have you heard of a lady called Dr. Rhonda Patrick?
No.
Well, she's into gut bacteria and a lot of those things as well.
Yep.
And the things that she says in the podcast that I listen to that she does are just incredible.
Yep.
like serotonin, I believe, is predominantly made in the gut.
Yep.
Not in the brain, as what most people thought.
Yep.
And it's just, the strong connection between the gut and the brain, I think, is only being uncovered now.
Yeah.
This is my own personal opinion,
Yeah.
And it like much the same as you, Amanda, the gut and the bacteria that we have inside us, our own little colonies, are affected by what we eat. That's why we might crave certain foods, junk foods. We know they're terrible, but you get the 10 o'clock, go for a Big Mac meal. Well, no, that's bad for you.
Yeah.
Why do you crave that?
Yeah.
Well, it could be our gut telling us,
The happiness.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a yeast overgrowth, then the yeast will crave sugars and they'll turn them into alcohol and you will get all happy.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, things
Not
like
saying
that.
that's not a good thing. It's just that sort of thing happens.
Yeah.
Do you see that changing the way we learn about the human body, or the way we learn about, say, the new endocrine system, or the way hormones interact, or?
In the long term, I don't see it. In the short term, at this point in time, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But
it's exciting.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I mean, I'm not a scientific historian, but that I believe used to be known, that was sort of put to the side, which people are rediscovering. And this importance of gut bacteria is definitely, one of those things.
Yeah.
A friend of mine got diagnosed with sort of certain imbalances in the gut and managed to source a source of I can't remember what it is, E. coli or something, but a positive one, positive E. coli, that had been cultured from a First World War soldier.
Wow.
In the days then, they obviously knew about gut bacteria. And this guy apparently, well, this is the story around this bacteria, he was the only survivor of dysentery in his whole platoon.
Yeah.
Right, and that dysentery, one of those, things
Yeah.
that's gut stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all died and he didn't. And they knew back then to get his gut bacteria and culture it. And that's still available today. Very expensive. So things were known, but, with the advent of the pharmaceutical model of medicine, etc., those sort of things get pushed to the side. And the big revolution in fermented foods where we can replenish our gut bacteria, etc. And there's a lot of research out there. And if you go to, the bookshops, and look at current books that are available, there's...
Do you recommend any?
Well, me personally, I'm very into the GAPS diet, gut and psychology syndrome. Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she... had an autistic son. She's actually a medical doctor, neurosurgeon, whatever.
Yep.
She's got the goods.
Yeah.
And she actually cured her son of autism.
Yeah, I've heard about this
That's
connection.
her story. Yeah.
That's incredible.
And there's quite a few other books that I'm
Yeah.
really into.
Yeah.
I can't think of them at the moment.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
We've just got our SCOBY growing at home.
Ah, yeah.
We've got back into the kombucha.
Nice.
That's a very interesting little organism to have hanging out in the house. I had to touch it the other day. Scary little things, but resembles the human gut in so many ways. For me, I mean, to palpate anyway. Ugh, scary
Wow.
creatures.
You palpating many guts lately?
Deep visceral anatomy.
Yeah.
No.
That's wow. I was listening to a podcast, as I do pretty much in my whole spare time, about the discovery of the Staphylococcus treatment. That it was just an accidental comeuppance of a scientist playing with some petri dishes and some bacteria in the petri dishes, and then he was notoriously, unhygienic, and he wasn't very meticulous with his cleanliness in his lab, and left the window open one day, come back the next, and found that the bacteria had actually died because of this. Something flew in and landed in it, which then killed all the bacteria. And I think that's where they come up with the antibiotics, which, they said, this is the next big thing. So many people are going to be cured of all these things. They're not going to die of staph and all those other illnesses. And then 3 months later, Staphylococcus resistant bacteria was found upon because it was no longer working. And it was the continual progression of combating the resistance of the certain bacteria, antibiotics that they were treating it with, that now they're seeing the bacteria that was first around, I think, in the early 1900s, I can't be exactly sure, is sort of appearing again because it's going through this evolution of bacteria number 1 to bacteria 10 today.
Yeah.
Well, now that's resistant. Bacteria number 1's now popping up again. So it's like this continual circle of...
Build a bigger rat trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just... really blew me away. I don't know what to say.
We all come from the, I guess, the lineage of medicine and where we arrive from. And for Amanda, I imagine the idea we were saying about the future before, but what the concepts Reese was speaking about, holographic teaching, and you were saying, but there's still nothing the same as, working with cadavers. In the next few years, where will the methods and the ethics and the way in which you teach, you see it remaining the same? I mean, this is effective, it's working for you, students are doing well.
I'm pretty sure there'll be a greater introduction of technology because even the textbook, the paper-based textbook is somewhat outdated now when you can download for $30
Essential
a
Anatomy.
3D anatomy program, and you could, have iPads in the lab. Now, please bear in mind that I'm not a technology person. And so, for me, I don't really know what exactly is possible there.
Yeah. I have the Essential Anatomy app.
Yeah.
I hardly ever use it. I'd go to textbooks.
Well, I prefer to read something paper-based.
Yeah.
My personal passion is the human imagination. And I feel that with all this technology and YouTube clips for this and YouTube clips for that, which is very passive and very much, sit back and watch it, you lose out on engaging your own imagination. And really, your imagination is what you've got that you carry around with you. If you're going to be a practitioner and you're with a client, you need to be able to visualize these things in your own mind. The reason why I do so much in my classes with students, teaching them how to learn, teaching them how to talk out loud and explain